video. Right now, I'm going to be doing the very requested sourdough tutorial. Now, I will say that this video will allow you to watch as you're making your sourdough loaf in real time and be able to keep up with all the steps instead of having to like pause it or like go back because like it's super fast and whatever. I'm also going to make a super quick rushed version of sourdough tutorial, so that way if you guys just want like the easy, like tell me the steps, tell me what to do, I don't need you to do it with me, that will be that. But for this video will be the long version, and I will literally make it with you guys. And not gonna lie, on January 29 of last year, 2024, is when I made my very first sourdough loaf, and I have learned a ton. I will say right now that I probably made sourdough once every week, if not at least once every 2 weeks, the entire year of 2024. I made a lot of loaves. Like, I can't even count. I try to keep track of how many loaves I made throughout the year, and then I lost track. So I've made so many, and I will say, this is probably gonna sound ridiculous, but I never use the same recipe twice. The purpose of that, like looking back, it was pretty ridiculous, but I think now I actually see that as a asset to you guys because I've tried so many different things and I know what works and I know what doesn't. And now that I feel like I've cracked the code on a recipe that works every single time, I literally deleted all the other recipes I had like screenshot and kept on my phone and whatever. And I'm just using one recipe. And this recipe I have just tweaked to make it absolutely foolproof. And I'm stoked to tell you guys every single step so that you guys can by far make the most successful sourdough loaf ever. I know so many things now that I truly wish that people would have told me before. But there was all these little things of like what you should do, what you shouldn't do, or you definitely have to do this. And I'm going to tell you all the things that you probably have seen on Instagram that they're telling you try this. Doesn't matter at all. And it also will help you save a ton of time. So let's get started. This is my starter. And you're probably like, what in the world? Like, that's crazy. It overflowed. That's terrible. This actually is incredible. This tells me that it was super bubbly. Number one thing that I feel like has really cracked the code on sourdough is everyone's like, oh, use the sourdough starter at its peak. Okay, well, everyone thinks that the peak is when it rises the most. And you're like, okay, use it then. So that's what I was always doing. And my starter was never powerful enough. Like, it was never strong enough to give me a really good rise for my loaf. So I was doing it wrong. What you want to do is when it peaks, it gets to like the highest point and then it drops. And it even stays dropped for like 6 hours. So I will say that this probably dropped a while ago. I am now, it's like what, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I fed it last night, probably around 9 p.m. So it's been a long time since I fed it. Yet I guarantee you that this is going to be so much more successful than making a loaf out of one that just bumped up maybe to like the top and then sunk down and then that's it. Hello.
So I messed up. You didn't tell me.
No, it's okay.
I'm sorry.
That's the nice part of editing.
Hey everybody, it's me, Drew.
You know what the nice part is? The mic's here.
Hi.
So that
I
actually.
want to shout out my channel.
Go for it.
That's Drew Rocks at 4793. Feel free to follow me on TikTok.
I support you. If you do start.
Hey guys, I'm starting a new merch line. It's called Southern Surf. You want it? I'm gonna do a free giveaway, guys. Free giveaway. If I make it to 10,000 subscribers by tomorrow, I'm gonna do a free giveaway. So yeah, stay with me.
Back to the recipe. You're gonna go ahead and take a food scale. Out of all the things that I use when I make sourdough, I think the food scale is by far the most important. Okay, so you're gonna go ahead and take a bowl. This one's actually kind of big because I'm gonna be making quite a few loaves. And as you can see, it says 731 grams. I'm gonna tear that so that can go back to 0. I can pull the ingredients directly into the bowl and I don't have to worry about measuring cups and tablespoons and all that kind of stuff. For one recipe, you're gonna want 90 grams of homemade sourdough starter, 385 grams of water, 12 grams of salt, and then 520 grams of bread flour. That being said, I am making more, so I'm going to triple the batch, I think. What you gotta do is you gotta make sure you have enough sourdough starter. So to triple the recipe, I'm going to need 270 grams of starter. Oh yeah, here is the bubbly starter. I mean, look at that. That's like fantastic, kind of runny. Okay, so 270 is going to be the goal. I think I will make it. Right now we're at 250. So I cannot do 4 batches, but luckily I can do at least 3. That's 271 grams, as you can see. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to add water. Everyone talks about, oh, you gotta have filtered water, you gotta have special water, whatever. My water comes straight out of the sink, okay? We drink this water, we've not died yet, so now you want it to be warm. Almost like cooled down bath water. That probably sounds so disgusting, but you understand what I mean. And I'm filling out this whole entire jar. I have no idea how much this weighs. So you gotta make sure you tare it once again. Sometimes it gets all wonky. So right now it's like showing -3. 1155 grams of water. Go ahead and pour that in. And really be careful. Just pour slow at the end because it gets super, super sensitive. So the measurements matter and the starter matters. I could literally go on about how many different things people tell you that you're supposed to do. People say that you're supposed to just add salt after an hour of autolyze. You've let the water and flour sit, and then you gotta add a little bit more of water while you put in the salt, and then you gotta punch it, like, you know, just kind of dimple it in and all this rubbish. Guys, I promise you, I've tried that. It does nothing. Okay, so do not waste your time. Do not worry. Okay, so now you're gonna tare it again, and then you're gonna add in the flour. 1560. And I will say that it's also super important, the kind of flour that you use. Whole wheat's gonna be different. You're gonna need a lot more water with whole wheat flour than just white bread flour. I'm using King Arthur's bread flour from Walmart, Costco, wherever. And I will say that it is my favorite because it's healthy. It's a good brand of flour. So I like to use a strong brand that I actually trust, which happens to be King Arthur. So, okay, 1560. There we go. Okay. And then I go ahead and add in the salt as well. So I'm going to tare it once again. I would definitely use a pink Himalayan as opposed to just the normal white salt. I just find it to be a bit heartier, tastes better, and it's a lot healthier. This fine grain naturally embedded with 84 minerals. I mean, check it out. How could you use any other salt? Anyways, this is the kind of salt that I use, and like I said, just put it directly into the flour. Don't be wasting time with all the pinching and the dimpling and the waiting an hour and waiting 30 minutes and whatever else they tell you. I promise you it does not make a lick of a difference, and it makes your life so much easier. So there is 36 grams of salt for you, and then you're going to go ahead and stir it in. So I actually made a loaf of or a couple loaves of sourdough at a friend's house in North Carolina, and I didn't have my special Danish whisk, which is what they call this thing, and I was just fine. So you can use a spoon. Frankly, these are really hard to wash, because flour gets in the middle of them. But I mean, at the end of the day, use whatever you can. I will say that something like a fork even would be good. Just something that you can use that isn't like a spatula. Like it's kind of nice to like be able to get in between, I don't even know what I'm saying, but yeah, so, okay. So here I am just mixing it around. Now, I've had people say, you gotta have it shaggy dough. And frankly, when I was first making them and I got this shaggy dough, it was so dry. And that's how they said it was supposed to be, like dry, like kind of like, I don't know if you can tell the difference over here than like over here. But they were saying, yeah, make it really shaggy and it shouldn't be all mixed in and all that stuff. That's true. You don't really need to have it all mixed in. Like this is kind of messy and that's fine. But it should not be dry and flaky. It should still be fairly wet. It will come together. So don't worry so much about that. But that's the goal right there. Okay, so the next step is to get a cloth just pretty wet, and then you're gonna be putting the cloth over the bowl. Now, I will say this is one of those things where it's like, I'm gonna try to eliminate any unnecessary step in this tutorial, but I will say that wetting a rag and keeping your bowl covered helps because otherwise it does dry out, and you don't want your dough to dry out because then that will hinder the rise. Because as soon as your dough develops kind of like a crust, it really hinders the maximal rise. So I usually just put it on top like this. Okay, now I will say that in the summer months, it's probably going to be a lot warmer in your house, just the environment. So it's going to take a shorter amount for your bread to rise. However, in the winter months, your house is more prone to be cold, and so it's going to take a longer amount of time for your bread to rise. So you will just have to kind of watch your bread and see if it needs more time to rise or if not. And I will show you guys different things you can watch for so that you can basically have a foolproof sign when the bulk rise is done. Now, before the bulk rise begins, right now is the process of the coil folds and the stretch and folds. And I definitely don't expect you guys to know what that is, but I will show you. It's super, super simple. I've also had a lot of times where people think that they've got to make it super complicated and you have to wait an hour between each stretch and fold, or you have to wait 45 minutes in between each stretch and fold, and then followed by 3 more sets of coil folds, 30 minutes in between. And I'm just like, no full-time working person can even make sourdough throughout the week. It's not possible. Like they have to make sourdough only on the weekends. I'm just telling you right now, I've done that. I've also done my way without waiting, and I've made way better loaves with just focusing on the few things that actually matter for a sourdough loaf versus the things that you can totally get your time and energy caught up in, and it doesn't even affect the loaf. So right now we are waiting around 15 minutes from the first mixing that you guys just saw. And then after those 15 minutes, I'll show you guys how to do the very first stretch and fold, and we'll just do 15-minute increments. So you're probably like, what in the world? How can you go from an hour in between each coil fold or each stretch and fold to just 15 minutes? Trust me, it works. It's enough time for the gluten bonds to just get tighter and tighter, which is what we're trying to go for. So I will catch you guys in 15 minutes. Set a timer. I'm going to go ahead and do that now. I have a little handy dandy timer clock because honestly, if you try to do timers on your phone, a lot of times either like your phone goes off, you don't hear it, or you have multiple timers on your phone and you don't remember, like, wait, was that for this or for that? You know, whatever. So I just find an old-fashioned kitchen timer where you just take it to 15 is the best. And it's already kind of been five-ish minutes since the last or since we mixed it, but it doesn't really matter because if you do go over 15 minutes, then you know it's fine. But at least 15 minutes. Honestly, if you don't have enough time and you just need to do 5 minutes, that's okay too. Trust me, it's okay. But if you want to be safe and really successful in your first loaf, then just start off with 15 minutes. Okay, so that's going to be there. Meanwhile, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how to refresh a starter. This is kind of a wreck. So the biggest thing that has helped me with just keeping up with a sourdough starter is to make sure that the container that I'm using is clean. That the most satisfying thing when it comes to a sourdough starter is to be able to see how much your starter has grown over the night or throughout the day or whatever. And that's really hard when the jar looks like this. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and clean off the sides so I can start fresh. As you guys can tell, my starter is still in there. That's the remaining that I have. If your jar is super, super messy like mine, I'm actually going to get another bowl and I'm going to pour my sourdough starter into that bowl. And you don't need that much. Like this would probably be a good amount. That's about as much as I need. Okay, so that's all you need. And that is what you'll put back into this jar. It's best to use a jar that doesn't have any ridges inside. So for example, my mason jar has like the ridges, right? So it's better to use a jar that is seamless just because sourdough starter can stay in a jar for many months in the fridge. And so you really don't want to have any kind of buildup or anything that would potentially cause mold or bacteria growth, the harmful bacteria, because obviously good bacteria is what helps keep a starter alive, but we're talking the kind that you don't want. Then I will put the little bit of sourdough starter back in here, and then I'll show you guys how to refresh it so that it can be most successful. The starter is so incredibly hard to clean, and it's actually kind of a pain. A lot of times people have said, oh, use cold water only to clean stuff. I've actually not found that to be helpful. It just makes me feel worse about it because it feels like it's taking forever. So I use hot water, I most definitely do, and I find that to be the most helpful. Another tip that you always want to make sure you do is to have some sourdough starter reserve in your fridge. Let's say that you keep your sourdough starter in your fridge primarily, and then you take it out to do a loaf. Don't take all of it out to do a loaf, because if for whatever reason that loaf fails, you have no more sourdough starter. Or if you happen to, maybe like you're washing it like I am, and then you get rid of all of it and there's nothing left, you could easily lose all of your starter. So I always keep a small mason jar that's ridge free in my fridge, so that way I always have extra just in case. Now I'm going to go ahead and take the little bit that I had in my bowl and just put it in there, and then I will add some flour and water to it. I'm going to take a little bit of flour and I'm going to go ahead and just put it in. As you can see, I didn't have much starter, but I added at least, I don't know, 1/4 cup of flour. You want quite a bit of flour in comparison to the little bit of starter. And then you're going to go ahead and put some water and then mix it up. You want to make sure the water is kind of warm. Here we have our tiny bit of sourdough starter and then all the flour. And then just enough where it's like a really nice pancake consistency. Kind of like a thick pancake consistency, because it's kind of like this. And don't worry about mixing it too much, but that's probably good. And then there you have it. Go ahead and put your little rubber band so you can see and track its growth. So there we are right there. It's kind of at the bottom of that. And then we will put a lid on that. and see how it goes.
So unfortunately my mic did not work for these next couple videos, so I'm just going to do my best to explain what it is that I am doing for the stretch and folds and the coil folds. So the first thing for the stretch and folds is you want to make sure that your hands are just kind of damp. This helps the dough not to stick to your hands, but you also want to make sure you're not adding significant amounts of water into your dough because you don't want to wreck the consistency, so just barely enough. And then you're going to go ahead and make sure that the dough is not sticking to the bowl, so just slightly unstick the dough on all sides. And then once you've done that, as you can see here, then you're going to go ahead and take small sections and you're going to pull it up, and then you're going to fold it back into the middle. So as you can see here, I'm just taking a small section, pulling it up, and then folding it into the center, and you're going to continue that pattern until you have done that all the way around. Now keep in mind, if you are on a time crunch, you definitely do not have to wait 15 minutes. You can literally wait 5 minutes. I will say if you're just starting out, it might be good to just give yourself that extra time of 15 in between each stretch and fold and coil fold, but it all depends on your schedule. Just remember, at the end of the day, don't change your schedule to work around sourdough. Make sure that sourdough can work within your schedule. I remember when I was first starting out, I would literally get up at unearthly hours to either check on my sourdough or do the next step or whatever, and I was like, this is crazy. This is not sustainable. And I wanted to be able to have sourdough be something that's a bigger part of my life, and I continue to do. And I knew that if I was allowing sourdough to make me lose sleep and just completely make my schedule and everything out of whack, I was not going to be able to keep it going. So just make sure that you make it work within yours, and just trust that sourdough is fairly forgiving and it will all turn out. I only did 2 coil folds in this tutorial. You can do more, but I would say 2 is a fairly good number. So the first thing you want to do is obviously make sure the dough is not sticking to the sides of the bowl, and then you're going to take your hand on either side of the dough and you're going to reach for the other hand underneath the dough. Once you touch your hand, then go ahead and pull up the whole dough, and what you want to do is have this nice clean lift off like you just saw, where all the dough, like none of the dough is sticking, and it just completely comes off from the bowl. And then you want to pull that where it slides underneath the main dough, and then you kind of wrap it on top. So the next thing is, I usually do this on either ends, and then instead of doing it where I do a complete 90 degree, I kind of do like a 45, and I do the same thing. And the reason why I found the 45 to be better than the 90 is because a lot of times the 90 stretches the top out so much that I'm afraid that's going to rip. And I will say that sometimes it does rip. That's probably has more to do with my dough strength, but I will say that I have found that the 45 angle is a lot it's a lot more foolproof when it comes to not tearing. And so as you can see, again, you're going to just meet your hands in the middle underneath the dough. You're going to pull that up enough where everything comes undone, and then fold it over, and then do the same thing. So you did the 180, you're gonna do the same thing to the other side, and then instead of doing the 90 degree and folding it on the other 2 ends, then you're gonna go ahead and just do the 45. Now, as you can see on that one, it did not completely go under like I would, so I just lifted up again, and then right here at that angle, the 45, I do the same thing on either ends, and then you can also just pull it up and then wrap it on top of itself, and do that a couple times. So you can probably see through the video, there's a little tiny bit of bubbles forming. It's becoming nice and tight. This is exactly how you want it.
Okay, so right now this just finished its bulk rise and I got my finger a little bit wet. I'm just going to press gently into the dough. So you see it slowly bounces back up in each of these little pokes. Now let's say you pushed it in and then it stayed in like that. That would mean that it is overproofed and you should definitely take it out. If it bounces back super quick and doesn't have any kind of like delay or slow bounce, then that means that you need to let it rise just a little bit longer. I'm gonna go ahead and take your dough and then just flip the bowl over and it should come out super nice and clean. And as you can see, that is a relatively clean bowl. There was not these giant chunks that were stuck to the bowl, which is a good sign. Okay, so to get your dough ready for the cold proof, you're going to need these items. White rice flour, this is what you put into the bowl to get that nice flour top when you pull it out of the fridge, and then you can like do your scoring. Cornmeal, this gives it a nice rustic bottom and helps it not to stick. And then these are the bannetons. I have 2 circular ones. I also have a couple of like oval ones. Either one works. It just depends on the shape of the bread that you want. And then I actually have this cover that came with the bannetons. I got these off of Amazon, and you can just put the rice flour in here, sprinkle it in, and then you can put your dough directly in there. Just to make it a lot easier cleaning wise, I put this cheesecloth, I also got these from Amazon, directly into the bowl first, and then I put the rice flour in. Just make it so that it's enough to flour it, but not too much. That's a pretty decent amount. Okay, so I'm gonna do the same for this one. The next step is lamination and then shaping of your dough. So I would recommend first splitting your dough into sections and then individually laminating each and then shaping each. So I made 2 loaves. These are actually kind of big. I probably could get 3 out of this, but I'm just gonna do 2. So I'm gonna go ahead and split it. Okay. And then I will go ahead and laminate. So that basically just means that you spread it out as much as possible, flatten it out. This helps stretch out all those gluten bonds, and you don't have to do this step. I've definitely done it without, but it just helps make everything nice and stretched out so that when you do fold it, you have a better rise, a better oven spring, as they call it. Okay, so also during this step, it should not be ripping. Like, you should be able to really stretch it out, and it should not be tearing. If it's tearing, then it probably means that it was either overproofed or your dough's not strong enough, which I've definitely done that before too. Okay, now for the shaping, there's a million and one ways you can do this, but usually I'll just fold it like this, and then I'll fold it in so the corners go in, and then I fold it in like this. Okay, now you have like this little fluffy ball. I'm going to actually flip it over. And then I'm going to do the same on the other side. Connect it so it becomes nice and tight. Okay, and then you'll create some surface tension by taking the dough ball, pushing it away from you and then kind of push and then tuck under and pull towards yourself. Now these little bubbles that are forming, you do want to pop them. It's not a bad thing, it's actually great, but just go ahead and pop them. Okay. So I don't know if you can tell, but that's super tight. Like it is a tight little dough ball. Okay. Then you're gonna go ahead and scoop it up, plop it into your ready-made banneton, and then you're actually going to, a lot of times people try to stitch it, is what they call it now. I found it a little bit easier for it to rest a little bit and then stitch it in just a moment. So we'll come back to that and we'll stitch it, and then we'll go ahead and do the same thing to this one. So same thing, lamination. And I'm going to show you a different technique of shaping for this one so that you guys can have an idea of what you can do differently. Okay, now as you can see, this is a little bit thinner right here than, let's say, over here. So I'm going to try to not make the top, when I roll it out, I'm going to try to not make the top of this dough ball that portion, because otherwise it's a weak part and it'll probably split. Compensate by folding it in this way. And then once you fold it in, you can take in the corners. And last time I pulled in this corner and then I pulled in this corner. But you can just roll it. You can just roll it like that. And then bring it towards yourself. Okay, and then these sides, you can either pinch them or you can flip it upside down and then pull it together. So we're gonna pull this towards me. And then I'm going to bring these sides together. And then roll it again. And then do the same thing. Now, as you can tell, I have a little section here that's weaker. So I'm going to not try to do this surface tension too much because I don't want it to bust. Okay. We'll stitch this together. We'll stitch that and make that a nice little line, and then we'll go ahead and do it on this side that we've been waiting. You can also put it in the fridge during this and then take it out and then stitch it. That would make it go by a little bit faster. This just helps keep it all together and nice and tight. Okay, there we go. So now you're gonna take your cornmeal, and this is the base. So this is the bottom of the bread. You need to get more cornmeal, clearly. And then you're just going to put it on top. Okay. And then go ahead and cover it. And then you'll pop that into the fridge for 1 to 2 hours, all the way up to like 17. This one we folded a bunch of times, so it'll be nice and tight by the end of it. So stitching is mainly just pinching the sides together. A lot of times people do this fancy like pulling thing like that. Anyways, I find it kind of useless, but okay. So I don't know if you guys remember how that looked before, but it definitely did not look like that. But pinching it just is gonna make that nice and tight, and you're gonna have an even better oven spring. Okay. Cornmeal, covering it up, and then let's put them in the fridge. And then you're going to leave these in the fridge
If you wanted to bake in about 1 or 2 hours, that'd be fine, but anywhere from 12 to 17 hours is a good amount of time to leave it in the fridge for their cold proof. I went ahead and just pulled these out of the fridge. It's been around, oh man, I don't even know. But like I said before, you can put it into the fridge for up to, honestly, I've left my dough in there for like 3 days and it's been totally fine. And also you can wait just like an hour or two and then also bake it. So let me remind you guys, it's actually super forgiving, and you can actually be really flexible with sourdough. So I'm gonna go ahead and uncover these and get the silicone mats, which I highly recommend using because it's a lot better as far as not browning or burning the bottom of your loaf, more so than parchment paper. Silicone mats are actually from the bread mat. They are absolutely incredible. You can stick them in the dishwasher and they clean super easily. So you're just gonna go ahead and put them on top like this. This one's actually wet because I just pulled it out of the dishwasher. The other thing you can do is when you take them out of the fridge, you can pop them into the freezer. That just helps firm up the loaf a little bit so it doesn't fall as much when you are scoring. And then it also helps with the rise because of the contrast from the freezing cold straight into the Dutch oven. I'll go ahead and put this one into the freezer for a little bit. Okay, so that one's in the freezer. I'm gonna go ahead and flip this upside down. So you have the bread mat. As you can see, this is where we put the cornmeal on. It just creates a nice rustic bottom. And then go and lift this up. This is all nice and clean and you can use it straight away with another one. And then this is the only thing that you end up washing, just the cheesecloth. This is the rice flour, so you can kind of see the reason for that, which makes it nice. So something that I actually learned that I found to be super helpful is a lot of times people on Instagram or wherever, they'll tell you do the 5-minute score, do the 7-minute score, don't score at all because then you release steam and all sorts of stuff. Just score it like deeper than you think that you should. I'll show you how to do that. And then 30 minutes with the lid on at around 500 degrees. And then I actually just keep the temperature 500. I know a lot of people are like, oh, go to 425 or go to 475. You don't need to change it at all. Do 500 degrees. And then I will say that if your oven just naturally heats hotter, you might want to bump it down to 475, 425, but my oven is not like so crazy. So I just keep it at 500 and then I take the lid off, and so it gets nice and like crusty on the outside. As soon as the crust forms, the rise stops. So if you don't like the rise or you feel like it could rise more, then I would keep it longer with the lid on, because once it gets that hardened crust, you're not gonna have any more, it's not gonna produce any more rise. So that's one tip that I really found helpful, and I will go ahead and show you how to score what I use before I put it into the oven. So I'm going to go ahead and put this blade on. This is the gooseneck lame from Wire Monkey. Absolutely amazing. I'm going to just tighten that up a bit. Be really careful because these blades are super sharp. But you can get these from Amazon as well. You can get a pack of these blades with a little handle, and then it doesn't have to be expensive. I just happen to invest in these because they are incredibly nice and they are super easy to use. This one is a little mini one, so this is for more like the small detail work, so you'll kind of see how I do that. Okay, so for the most successful scoring, you are going to take your lame, and then you're going to kind of have it angled like this, not like this, and not like this, but just kind of at an angle, okay? And then I'm gonna go ahead and do a nice cut, okay, and do it pretty deep, okay? And then to get that little lip, you're gonna go right underneath the top. I'll go ahead and show you again, right underneath the top, like that, to get the lip. Okay, then I'm gonna take my smaller one and do a fun design. So I think I'm gonna do the 3. These are also fairly light designs. Okay, so you don't want them to be too deep. And you can just kind of get creative and do whatever you would like here. Okay, so there's my random design. I went ahead and grabbed some ice cubes. You don't have to do that step, but it does create more steam, which is kind of nice. So you just put, you know, 3 to 5 in there. Place your sourdough. Pop the lid on top, and you're gonna go ahead and set your timer for 5 minutes, the time that you're gonna do your expansion score, which basically means you're gonna take your lame and you're going to cut a little bit deeper so that it can rise a bit more. My 5 minutes timer went off, and do the expansion score. That, and then I'll go right underneath the lift as well. Go ahead and put that back in and then set a timer for around 25 minutes, and then we'll come back and we'll do about 15 to 20 minutes with the lid off. The timer went off, so I'm gonna go ahead and take out the first loaf. All we're doing now is just taking off the lid, and we're going to bake with the lid off for about 15 minutes. Set my timer for 15 minutes with the lid off, and then we will take it out. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and take my frozen loaf out. Not quite frozen, but just a lot colder. I do the same thing with this one. Thanks so much for watching that extremely long video. If you made it all the way through, you're amazing. I hope that you actually like made sourdough as you were watching, because that was the whole goal and purpose of the longer version. I will be making a shorter version so that you guys can just have every single step and then just boom, know what to do. But I thought that it might be helpful to have it in real time, because at least that's what I was kind of wanting and looking for, and I couldn't find one. So here is my version of it. Hopefully that you guys made the best sourdough of your entire life, and will continue to be encouraged to keep it up, make more sourdough, and know that it's not actually that complicated as so many people make it out to be, and anyone can do it. You can make it work in your schedule, and it's just the best thing ever. So warning, you probably will get really hooked to making it, but now you know all the tips and the tricks, and I hope that it was successful. If it was not, then leave a comment below. We can try to do some troubleshooting, because I want everyone to be successful, because it's fun. So anyways, have the best week or weekend ever, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye.